This is a hand model I bought so I can make Spider-Man. Draw Spider-Man. And nothing else. Nothing, only Spider-Man. No other drawings of any kind. Just on a Spider-Man kick. I know I'm a mess in general. I have roommates that sleep at every hour of the day, and I wanted to get to cut my hair before this, and people are still sleeping. And when I cut all my hair, I need to then vacuum up all the hair and not leave that to be a problem for somebody else. The fun of having having roommates that work at night is like what time of day am I allowed to vacuum? Sometimes you just kind of wait all week for that window to happen. Anyway, something close to like a year ago now, I made a video about Sigma Paws, or Anthony Poe, who was this YouTuber who went to a furry convention and did maybe crimes, and under the guise of being the cool guy who's being nice to the furries. And it was just a very strange video. And at first I just kind of bounced off the video, but the more it cooked, the more like it settled with me, the more I'm like, I feel like I need to talk about this and address that. And people seem to like that video. Very weird thing. Yeah, so he went to a furry convention. He claimed that he was going undercover as a furry, which was inherently just false. Mainly the part where he said he was going undercover for like 100 days or a year or whatever the fuck it was, where it's like, you making a YouTube parody account about, or a TikTok parody of furries and making videos on that for like a little bit every now and then. That's not really undercover as a furry. Like, undercover inherently means going into a space full of that group of people and like passing and so on. And you don't have to be undercover as a furry. You could just be a furry, or just be in furry spaces, or be friendly with furries. He could have gone to any local furry meetup. He could have gone to a number of conventions, and he could have even just spent time with furries. Like, I didn't bring this up in the original video, but what I found very amusing is that he tried making a furry Twitter account for his character, and he made one tweet. He responded to JFops with like, "Hey," in response to, I don't know, some generic, just whatever the hell the message was about. And that was his one tweet. He responded to one popular furry DJ one time and then never came back to furry Twitter. That's the level of undercover he was. I'm just like, it's so frustrating. I'm like, you can just be furry or be around furries. It's normal. It's not that big of a deal. But that I unpacked all of the stuff about how that video is weird in my, I guess, video essay or whatever it is, or drama video over on the Boring Keith channel. But that guy was promising this like inside view about the hit exclusive secrets about furry conventions, and it wasn't that revealing. He paid lip service to the idea that furries are just normal or cool or weird or whatever, but just like it's harmless, that kind of stuff. But he also was lacing the whole thing with weird homophobic jokes that were like, not like overtly intentionally homophobic types of jokes, but like the types of jokes you say when you haven't interrogated the inherent homophobia in a lot of stuff, and also why you would think that particular joke is funny, is all built around the idea of like just making jokes at the expense of gay people. But like the big secret he was getting into was the idea that there are furry parties, which is a fucking hilarious thing to say at a furry convention. It's like, he meant orgies or any kind of other like sexual meeting or whatever, sexual meeting. So we're going to stack our papers, and someone's gonna take minutes. There are sexual meetings at furry conventions. So that's the funniest part, is that thing that I said that sounds absurd and hilarious is just a real thing. It will probably happen several times. But he said all that, he built it up like a secret, but everyone already knows that furries have sex parties at conventions. It's not like what the convention's about. It's not like the reason you go exclusively, but like he was talking about something like it was elusive and secret when it's a thing that's well documented, and consenting partners will just film and put online and just show people. Like it's not a secret. So that was goofy as shit, and it was just a false mystery. There was nothing going on there. It's just a stupid video. It's just a very stupid video that centers him as being super funny, and they hyper edit all these moments of him doing stuff, and they don't interrogate what they're doing along the way. And I got into that video because it was an interesting look at the YouTuber brain. And like, I always have to deal with some element of the YouTuber brain. Like, I am a YouTuber. I'm currently doing a series right now that this one right now, where I'm kind of like launching into a different format because it seems to perform well. And you kind of like, you take actions and then you get feedback on those actions, and then you try to figure out if that was like a good idea to pursue, or if that's a direction you want to take things in, or if that's the kind of content you want. But you importantly can't just let the algorithm and feedback exclusively tell you what to do, because if you do that, you end up doing something unethical. You end up doing a lot of Logan Paul shit, and that's the well that people fall down. And unfortunately, a lot of YouTubers get into it very young, are practically raised on the platform, and they're raised watching people do all this attention-grabbing stuff and getting rewarded for it. So then they will go through this surprisingly long process of, for example, going to a furry convention and then inviting yourself into, like, worming your way into like sexual parties that you express discomfort with in your video, but you're doing to yourself because you're the only, no one's making you do any of this, and then filming that stuff. And then not only in that moment filming people in a violation of privacy and not questioning whether or not you should be filming other real human beings in an intimate setting without their consent, but then going home and then months later having the choice to like edit that video and then script a voiceover for that video and do an entire production cycle for that video, because he had like different hair length by the time he was doing his commentary later, and then upload that video to what is probably a relatively young audience given the type of videos that he's making. And you're like, you essentially made like a censored sex tape without people's consent and then uploaded it. And it's like, even if somebody in this voice chat said that people might be filming, that's like personal use stuff. You don't film. No one involved that talks about the idea that somebody might record parts of this thinks that they mean for YouTube. That's insane. You don't. But I'm just getting sucked back into the topic of that video again. But what bothered me is that he didn't really teach us shit about furry conventions, really. He just kind of, like, soy face pogged at us, point, and like, you know, to the YouTube thing where you, like, you mug for the camera and act like everything's crazy all the time when relatively normal things are happening around you. It's just not very informative, but it wasn't really meant to be. It's the aesthetics of YouTube videos where people pretend they're going to be informative or helpful or dig into something, but they're actually making a hyper edited 15-minute video that's just a kind of just moves so quickly you don't even register the fact that it has no particular structure or like narrative to it. It doesn't really like go anywhere. And then in that video's case had to retroactively delete the part that was the obvious attraction of the video to the creator, and then now it's just a bird without wings. Whoops. So I wanted to talk about furry conventions because I'm going to one again. I was just at Las Vegas FurCon 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm going back to FWA again in 3 days. I'm going to be flying there. That's going to suck. I like the East Coast cons. They're better spaces. They have a lot more, just way more space. For MFF isn't great for space, but Anthrocon and FWA are both huge for the space that they have. Both because Anthrocon is in Pittsburgh and just has a genuine convention center, which almost none of these conventions are able to get unless it's a pretty small one, like at Further Confusion, and that one's being shared. And then FWA is blessed with just the fact that it's one of its host hotels just has a comical amount of floor space. It's just a giant hollow tower with a massive open floor, and then there's like a carve out of that and an escalator going down and another massive floor to walk around on, and then another carve out and escalator going down again. So there's 3 floors and then a top floor like terrace DJ podium top point thing just a comical amount of floor space for a bunch of people to walk around and meet up with each other, and for fursuiters to be able to stop and hang out without blocking traffic, because it's just genuinely wide open. It's so much space despite not being a convention center, as far as, I mean, unless it counts as one. I don't know how this categorization works. In my brain, convention centers are their own separate thing. But to answer Anthony Poe's very pointless question, yes, furry parties do exist. There are horny parties all over these conventions. They are not public. They are not, some of them are a little public. Generally speaking, it's just the fact that these conventions take place in hotels. And so people can do whatever the fuck they want in their hotel room. A significant amount of hotels in general are rented for sexual reasons, even outside of conventions or any kind of overall get-together. But in these cases, yes, there are a number of different like grades of horny parties that do exist at furry conventions, and you generally need to be invited to one. So it mostly involves being connected to somebody who is already there or having some kind of social networking thing going on, because in many cases it's like they're organized by friends or people that know each other, and then the people that know them, and it just depends on how open people feel like being with that kind of stuff. Like one of the variants is like an underwear party, which is just, you just show up and then you take pretty much everything off and then you just hang out, and it kind of depends on the party what the rules are, essentially. Sometimes it is just kind of like people hanging out and cuddling and chatting and flirting and just kind of enjoying each other's company in a relatively chill way. And sometimes all bets are off and people can just start getting up to stuff if they want to, and that's a thing where it's like, okay, everyone in this room knows what the ceiling is, so it's not going to bother anyone, and if they don't want it, if they don't want to be around it, they can leave. And, you know, if someone wants to put on a show, then that's their thing. But most of the parties at furry conventions are just parties. Like, it's just somebody is like, I got a suite, I have a whole bunch of space, and I got like drinks and snacks and things, and invite a bunch of my friends, and then some of them can invite their friends, and a bunch of people all pack in there. And it's mostly people hanging out, and somebody's probably making mixed drinks and serving those up and so on. Like how I was handed Amicus bath water last year at this convention, which was like lavender and rum or something. I don't remember exactly. No, I think it was gin. I think it might have been lavender and gin. I'll probably be handed another one this year by the same people. And like those are just normal, regular get-togethers. Then there's the next level, which is there's more like the party block, which this tends to exist either in a weird separate space, like in Las Vegas FurCon, it's its own whole convention building, or a whole building of the hotel that's separate from the other ones, because that one's so broken up. But on other conventions, there's often the party floor. There's just a specific floor that is just an active party location, and this is pre-organized, and so you know if you're renting a room on the party floor or not, and you're going to be a part of this whole mess. And there, you're much more likely to have, like, you have a hotel room that is open, and they put tapestries up on the walls, and they set up, like, probably purple lights or color-changing lights, and they have a DJ in the room, which might be one of the same DJs that actually perform for the convention itself, but they're doing a private show, or I guess not that private, but a smaller show in this location, and people are allowed in, and it's just like, usually just this room will be like wall-to-wall people that are just actively, they're just, you know, moving a bit in the space they have and enjoying the loud music and probably some drinks. I hate these parties. If you invite me to one of these parties, I will smile politely, wander around a little bit, look at the art on the walls, and then I will leave and do anything else, because I don't like the loud music, because it means I can't talk to anybody, and that's like all I do really is chat with people. So not being able to chat with people kills it for me. I don't like going to dinner at places that are too echoey, because I'm like, I can't hear anyone. Like, I'm not here for the food. I'm here for the people. So I don't like these kinds of parties. I don't like dancing. I know that most people are kind of just moving a bit and that's all they're doing. It's not even real, like much in the way of dancing. But whenever I try to do it, I feel extremely stupid and my brain kind of screams at me the whole time. And I just want to stop and I want to not be seen and I want to go away. And I understand that the people around me are also just kind of doing whatever. And when they do it, it doesn't seem stupid to me. So it shouldn't seem stupid to me when I do it. But it still never becomes fun. Like, I do not like it. And I said, as somebody who actually does enjoy the idea of a choreographed dance, like in the times of my life where I've been paired with like another person or a group of people and we do like some kind of routine as a group or something, that's actually fun. And I feel less stupid because I'm following the instructions, I guess. So that's a thing I get to deal with on that level. But the party floor is mixed on what's going on each particular room there, and it might be mixed on what level of like people are allowed in or whether or not there's some curation going on there. There's often an entire room that's dedicated just to serving water and having a quiet space, like basically like a chill out space, just like both to give people water so that they can hang out and not die on the party floor for a variety of reasons, but also it's a quiet space that isn't actively a party, and you can chat with people a little bit there, but mostly just kind of slow down and chill and kind of recenter yourself if you're maybe like freaking out a little bit or getting overwhelmed on that floor, but also don't necessarily want to leave, because a problem with all these conventions is that all of the elevators get super jammed and it's really hard to change floors at these parties or at these conventions because the elevators just can't keep up with the sheer number of people trying to go around everywhere. So you might feel the need to stay on the floor and not leave, but you also might not be doing well right now. So having that one room that lets you chill is pretty neat. Amusingly, I went to the water station in Further Confusion in San Jose when the first time I went there, and one of my old tabletop friends was there. One of Marty's friends was there, and I was like, "What? I didn't even know you were furry." In fact, I don't think that he is a furry. I think he just knows furries and enjoyed getting involved in this stuff. But he mans the water station on the party floor. Like, would arguably the most intense situation to be in. Or like most intense environment to be in at a furry convention that's public, and there's just randomly this one guy here that I don't think is a furry, just manning it for fun, essentially as a volunteer, which was just a fascinating jump scare moment to recognize somebody in a place like that. And I was like, "Hi, I guess you know I'm a furry now because I'm here." And even if you're not, it'd be very hard to accept the argument that I'm not somehow, because what am I doing wandering around right now? But that's like basic safety helpfulness right there in that one floor. In Further Confusion's case, I don't know how common this is. The entire party floor has saran wrap across the carpet, just all the way down, just up and down the entire hallways of the hotel room and from the elevator bay and so on. Which is funny because on some level it's hard not to read it as like being. It's hard not to make a horny joke about that, just being like, oh yeah, they gotta protect all the surfaces from the furries, but it's probably also just for like spillage and any number of different things, just every type of fluid that they don't want to have to clean out of the carpet afterwards because of the sheer amount of foot traffic, and also maybe they can then like pull up the whole thing at once to gather up any like garbage lying around too, because if you just like. They're hosting like a concert practically on that floor one way or another. There's so many people jammed in there with random solo cups and garbage that there probably is just a mess to clean up. Which is probably why they have the party floors, to try to not only make it, I know it's more convenient for the people attending, but it's also like you concentrate as much of the mess that the convention is going to make in one location. But from what I understand, I haven't really spent much time on these floors. I think that these are also where some of the more like publicly horny parties might end up being, and it kind of varies there. But the party floor is basically, I think the main rule there is just the fact that it's like the one where you're allowed to be that loud, because obviously the party floor would ruin the lives of everyone else at the convention if it was like interspersed amongst all the things. Like, I would lose my mind if I was trying to sleep at this convention to be able to wake up in time for my plans tomorrow, and also just I struggle at sleeping at these in general. And then there was like a DJ next door. That would ruin my life. So obviously having a whole floor for that stuff, bare minimum, makes that stuff work. So there is a lot of dedicated party stuff going on there. We had I flee those locations. I might like visit briefly and be like, just see what people are up to and be amused by that, and just see like, 'cause people are dressed in a particular way in that setting, and like it's interesting to see what people are up to. And on some level, because I talk about furry stuff, like on some level, like just witnessing some of the stuff more is kind of like research in a way of just me understanding more and more about what's happening around me at these conventions and being able to discuss things more distinctly. I've heard people claim that this stuff is also common at like anime conventions or whatever, and I have no idea how true that is because I will probably never go to an anime convention. All I know is that my one convention I went to before all of these furry conventions was PAX, and that was just a reason to play some game demos, buy some merch, and go to a lot of panels about development of various games, and getting to see like industry vets talk about like what it was right to write for BioWare for 20 years and stuff like that, that was really cool. And I might go to PAX again someday, but other than that, it was very much like you're coming here for this media and this genre of stuff. You're here to consume in a way. What's fundamentally different about furry conventions compared to something like PAX is that it is just like a giant party. It is just a social gathering. There isn't a lot of consumption to be done. Like there is the dealer's den, and that is like, you like furry stuff, here's a bunch of furries. Here's all these people making furry merch or furry art prints, or even taking furry commissions, or selling pre-made fursuits right there on the floor. Like when I went to my first furry convention, MFF 2022, with Toaster, he just wandered off and bought a fursuit. He just was that into it, I guess. We were looking for a raccoon tail that was the same color as his fursona, because most raccoons are gray, but his is brown, and it's hard to find a brown raccoon tail. So I kind of split up to help him look. And when I came back, he had a fursuit. You can make an impulse buy that quickly. And there's also there's fursuit makers that also take commissions on right there on the floor, and they're like, you can essentially get appointments and get in line in their queue if you don't want to buy one of the pre-mades, but want to get in line to get a specific character made, like your fursona and so on. Which is a process. It's time consuming, and it's a long wait because you got to wait for these people that are making probably one or two suits at a time to be able to get around to like yours, basically. So like there is money to spend on furry, but you like don't know what you're going there for in the same way. Like it's not the same thing as you being like, I'm going to PAX because I need to know about the next Halo, and I must consume Halo, and I'm gonna get hyped about the upcoming Halo. It's like that part of that concept of consumerism doesn't apply the same way, and instead it's just like you appreciate art in the abstract in this area, so you're just like open to the idea of maybe even just encountering art you've never seen before and then buying it on the spot just to have it in your life in the future and so on. It's like that level of stuff. It's not about the Marvel movies and things, and that difference is very welcome. But like, while there is the dealer's den where you can go buy that stuff, and in the bigger conventions it is very large, there's a lot of dealer's den at MFF, Anthrocon, and FWA. That's like a one-day thing. You wander in, check it out, and then you're there for like 3 or 4 more days, and you probably won't go back unless you have a specific thing you meant to go back for. Or in my case, what I do is I wander up and down the whole dealer's den the first day just to look at it when it's too crowded, and then I come back to buy things later when I actually have like, when I want to go in with like an exit plan and know how to get all my stuff back to the hotel. So that whole element comes and goes in one day. There is also an after dark part of the dealer's den, which I'm not going to shy away from or anything. It's something that bothers me about a lot of coverage of furry stuff is how much people are so dedicated to distancing themselves from the adult side of the fandom, and the fact that adult stuff is happening, and the fact that adult furry art exists and so on. I find that silly because like anyone who's on the internet is very aware of how much adult furry art is around because they're on the internet. That's probably the primary exposure people will have to furries. I understand the reflex to then be like, but there's so much more than that stuff. What if you're sort of like trying to fight them only interpreting furry as being that stuff and nothing else? But like it also is like heavily that stuff, and that's part of like that's part of sex positivity. That's part of like all of it being pretty normal. Is that like people are just chill about this stuff, and it's not weird to be sexual as an adult. Like that's just not a weird thing, and most of society doesn't really care about this stuff when it's straight. So part of my frustration with some of this stuff is that like so much of this is queer sexuality and there's so much shame attached to it, and there's always, whenever furry comes up, it's always people distancing themselves from this stuff, and that always kind of bothers me because of how normal sexuality is for straight people, and how this conversation wouldn't really have to happen in this way, but it happens specifically here in this context, and there's so much backpedaling all the time. And I find that frustrating whenever any kind of mainstream thing happens where people are covering furries, or like a YouTuber gets a panel of furries to chat about the furry fandom. They almost always act like the adult stuff doesn't exist, or that it's not really what furries are or something. And it's like, it's weird because when you're actually in these places, it's right there. There's a lot of it. It's all over the place. It's in the people's behavior. It's in the atmosphere. It's in like the fact that there's an entire market for it. And it's like, it just feels strange to act like it's not there. And I feel like it's a combination of like, sometimes some internalized queer phobia, and also sometimes the people being interviewed are a very specific subsection of like straight furries that, for more obvious reasons, don't super resonate with the sexual stuff in the fandom, because a lot of it isn't of them, essentially. And so they're kind of not fully interrogating the fact that they're poo-pooing the queer representation in their own fandom in this interview kind of stuff. Like I got a lot of mixed feelings about those things. But in generally speaking, at the dealer's den, there is a big old black curtain and somebody checking IDs at the entrance, or whatever form of age verification that the convention might have already implemented. Like at LVFC, which I was just at, we had wristbands that already identified what our age was, and some of them do that, but other ones just have the badge that shows that you're registered, so they have to check your ID at the gate to let you in one by one. And inside there, it's often a lot of the stuff that was in the main dealer's den, but not censored, or the alternate version of that kind of stuff. You have adult art, you have adult toys, you have a lot of like gear. That's where they usually are selling harnesses and pup masks and all these other things. It's where there's Bad Dragon, if they happen to attend, is usually in there, which people just know what that is already. And Bad Dragon's funny because they have their whole ass stall that has an intake and outtake and a wall. They set up a whole ass thing, and you have to get in line for it to get in. So you get in line to get into the after dark, like adult dealer's den, and then you just get back in line to then get into Bad Dragon, because they command their own line with the amount of attention that they get, which is very funny. I already know what Bad Dragon does, so I have never felt the need to get in line for that. I just like look over, be amused by the fact that Bad Dragon has that giant audience there, and then kind of move on. But aside from the dealer's den, it's just a giant party, which I've said before, but that is like the idea of it. And it's every version of a party. Like there is a concert hall venue, usually some kind of stage where they have DJs on rotation most of the time, seemingly, and they host a whole bunch of dances there. And if you want to go dance in the dark with some people and some loud music, then you do that. And every hour or two, like the DJ rotates, and you have that kind of a party. Or you have those dense, like college dorm block party things on the party floor where you're in a really tight, closed room. But if you're like me and hate both those things, then it's a lot of the other kinds of parties. Like you trying to like coordinate with a bunch of friends, and maybe you'll get dinner together, or maybe you will just go to some kind of attraction in like the local city, or in most cases you just, whoever has the biggest room hosts a party. Sometimes it's a karaoke party, sometimes it's just, hey everyone, we got drinks and we're all just gonna come up here and all hang out in this big suite, and people just kind of come and go as they want. You get to meet a lot of people and circulate and spend time with people, and not insignificant number of these feature Smash Brothers being playable in the room. In fact, there is also an arcade at most of these conventions, just a whole ass rented arcade, where they'll at least have like a few dancing games, a few other rhythm games, some shooters, some fighting games, and then they'll often host fighting game tournaments or other kinds of tournaments to like really just, if you're there for the games, you can just keep playing games all day. But part of the fun of a furry convention is that if you're having downtime between your plans, you don't currently have a party to go to, you're not currently getting a meal and so on, you can just wander the floor. There is always some kind of space where people are just kind of ambiently hanging out, and maybe even multiple places where people are moving between them, and just kind of going up and down these areas, and also going up and down the transit between them and so on, just gives you a lot of chance to not only people watch, just see so many fursuits and kind of take in the fact that like you're looking at hundreds, sometimes thousands of fursuits, and those are all just unique people with unique designs. Like each one's a unique character, and each one represents just like hundreds of hours of manual labor to make that suit. Like it's a very time-consuming process to make a fursuit. So seeing all of them at once is like wild in general. And there's sometimes like a kind of therapeutic aspect of just wandering around these spaces and just looking around, because it's like what I imagine is a bit like some kinds of going to like Pride and so on, which I've never actually still been to, where just you are surrounded by a lot of queer people, and also just a lot of like cool people, like people that are just like up for being kind of weird and fucking societal norms, and this being what's happening instead. And what's going on here is just better than what's normally happening in life. Like normal life is so boring, and people are so caught up on heteronormativity basically, but like just the performing masculinity and performing femininity, and like having to like fit into specific categories with your gender expression and your sexuality and whatever religious like noise floor is in your personal state and so on. And it's so restrictive for personal expression, and a lot of people just like have that weighing them down all the time. So when you're in a space like this, there is like this freeing element of like, there is no normalcy here, at least not in the way that the outside world is, and it's just very nice to just kind of be in that space. But also wandering around is one of your best chances to just run into people. You can run into people there, and people are more recognizable than normal as far as online people go, because in some cases they're wearing a whole ass mascot costume of the character that you know them as online. So those are extremely recognizable compared to all of just the regular humans walking around. All the fursuiters are extremely recognizable. You have a chance to actually encounter some people that you know, or that you know of. And then even for the other people, like everyone's wearing their badge. I don't have it on me right now. Everyone's got their badge. They're just like, here's who I am. Mine's double-sided because I'm a genius. It's like everyone takes fursuit photos and release photos, and like their badge will be like, oh no, it's flipped over. Oh, my badge is here, but it's the back. Damn it! You can only see the back of it. That sucks. Put a second badge on. Now, then when it flips over, it's just another badge, and then it's never backwards. No more photos where you have the white back of your badge in the photo, and no one can tell who that is, or so on, or just, you know, it's just ugly to see the back of a fursuit badge instead of the actual one. So, pro tip for everyone who hasn't figured that one out yet. But like with those badges, you can recognize a lot of your online friends or acquaintances relatively quickly, because you just see that and you're like, oh shit, that's that cartoon character, that's that person who is online but doesn't really show their face constantly because it's not Facebook, it's like furry social media is people interacting through their avatars. So having the chance to recognize who somebody is means, oh, I know somebody here, and you can like maybe stop and chat with them. And I should mention, as far as recognizing me goes, I'm generally like, I'm up for people to approach me and talk to me and so on, and that's all fine. In fact, this was actually what the was the original point of this video. I was like, I'm going to FWA in a few days, and I'm doing this weekly vlog series thing. I should like actually talk to people about encountering me at conventions. And then the topic kind of expanded from there, and I was like, let's just actually just talk about furry conventions in general and explain these and just be less mysterious about this stuff than some people try to pretend that it is. If you encounter me at a convention, you can just come up and say hi. It's fine. You people usually, like, they come up, they say hi, they say which this or that thing they know me from, be it null playing games. It's never null playing games. The video essays or the let's plays and so on, and that's all fine. Just let me know why you're talking to me, basically. And then yeah, you just, if I'm not like currently heading somewhere right now and taking off, we can just chat about something for a bit. I'm generally open for that. I take pictures with people. That's all fine. In fact, I kind of prefer when people take pictures with me, not because I like being in pictures. I hate being in pictures. But I am socially awkward and weird. So on some level, if I hand you a sticker or you take a picture with me, I'm like, okay, there we go. They got a thing from the thing. So like, they were excited to run into me because of something that I did, and they got something out of it. So like, they have a memento of some kind or a photo of the memory, and then like yeah, I ran into that guy, and then like that's like, there's no like, oh, I wish I took a picture, I forgot or didn't think about it, and I don't always remember to offer. But for me, if you're not like a really powerful extrovert that can lead the conversation, I don't always contribute very well either. So I might just be awkward, like, yeah, sounds good, hope you're having a good con, and then I don't know what to say either. So transitioning to taking a picture and then moving on is often the best thing for everyone, where it's like, okay, an activity's happening, this thing happened, all right, cool, they ran into me, they get to say they ran into me, whatever their purposes are, whatever makes them feel good in that situation. But yeah, I like meeting with fans. I've had some really interesting conversations with fans sometimes. I definitely get nervous about how I come off because I'm always anxious about everything all the time. So if I seem a little weird, it's probably just because I'm nervous in general, because that's just how I always am. And also maybe anxious about this or that element of the interaction, just trying to figure out what to do. And also like, each interaction comes at a different level of readiness. You roll your d20 on how, whether or not you get caught flat-footed or whatever, to just mangle this metaphor. And sometimes suddenly hearing your name and just like, bah, can be like a little bit of a flashbang moment where you kind of like, your brain flatlines and you just don't have thoughts and you don't know what to say or do. And people that work in a lot of customer service or as waiters and stuff are probably like better at being like, hi, and then doing like the kind of having like a routine of like social graces that you kind of like cycle through. But I straight out of college went to work in a cubicle and then did this, and I've been doing this full time for the last 9 years. So I mostly sit in a quiet alone space and don't greet people daily. So I have not worked that muscle at all. So don't worry if I seem weird. That's just because I'm weird. But it's not like you probably didn't do anything wrong. But yeah, just, it's like 100% if you recognize me, I'm not going to bite. And I say this, like, everyone who approaches me is braver than me, because I have approached almost nobody ever at any furry convention, aside from going to their dealer's den stall to buy stuff from them and maybe saying something nice about their stuff there. But otherwise, I only go after people at conventions if we've already separately said something. If we've already separately said something in social media on like Telegram or Blue Sky or something. Otherwise, I'm like, I just assume this person has no interest in me and doesn't know who I am, even if we're like, even if we're mutuals on social media or something. I am terrified to walk up to random people and introduce myself in basically any context. So everyone who comes up to me is braver than me, and so good job on that. And yeah, you can just come up and chat. It's not a big deal. Definitely, but don't follow me afterwards. There's been a few of those, and I'm like, okay, no, you don't. Do not. If we're not mutuals and we've never chatted before and so on, and we're just like saying hi and making some polite conversation, don't try to like join my day for the rest of the day or anything, because like that gets awkward where it's like I don't know who you are, and and I'm not inviting you into my life for the rest of the day. That gets awkward. But aside from that, it's all fine. And just as a general rule with old people, a lot of people at furry conventions, they hug and all this other stuff. It's just one of those things where it's like, you always ask first. This is just a general PSA for fursuiters and so on. There's a lot of people walking around in fursuits, and that's exciting. Don't touch them unless you actually talk to them first about that. You don't just like start petting and hugging random people just because they happen to be wearing a funny costume. That's just a general vibe with that stuff. But yeah, for somebody like me who just kind of ambiently knows a bunch of people, like offhand or with very different levels of awareness and familiarity, walking the con space is very good for just getting the chance to run into and recognize some surprise people that you either have missed so far and haven't been able to actually coordinate with, or even maybe didn't even know who's at the convention, because these are so populated and you know so many people. It's very difficult to actually get like any kind of like roster of who's around at this convention and when to meet up with them. So like just kind of like hanging out in the con space is just like a good practice to have whenever you are just kind of looking for something to do but don't really know what to do right now. You can just kind of randomly encounter people, and that just changes your plans going forward. I've had days like at MFF where I just went out there, I ran into some artists that I knew, and then met with them and chatted with them for like hours about a variety of different things, and they had a growing group of people that they knew that were kind of joining in, and just kind of had like a growing little social circle hanging out in sort of like one of the back rooms of MFF. And then we went to get coffee, and I happened to run into one of my previous roommates from a different convention at the coffee place, and then I got invited by him to go to a Korean barbecue place with a larger group of people, with even more people that I knew, that I barely knew was even happening. Like I just kind of like improvisationally just kind of like fell through all these different plans and got involved in all this stuff. And that's kind of like how a lot of that can go. But that is why I also try to tell people not to go to furry conventions if they don't have a friend group, if they don't have a built-in social circle of some kind, or they're at least like a mega extrovert, or they just like know a ton of people in general but don't have a specific plan yet. Like those are all approaches you can have. But if you are new to the furry fandom and you're a lurker and you don't have a friend to go with, I would not recommend paying significant amounts of money and investing a bunch of time into a furry convention unless you really dig like being a wallflower and hanging out and in a space for days without necessarily knowing like what to do with that time necessarily, because you will be very disappointed because of the fact that like if you go to Disneyland, you go there and there's all the rides and stuff. If you go to PAX, there's a billion games to get in line for, to play early, and all these industry professionals to chat with. And if you go to a furry convention, there are panels and some events. I'll get into that in a minute. But the main reason people go to furry conventions is to meet people and to meet up with people they already know in many cases. And it's a hotel. So a lot of this happens invisibly. A lot of people disappear into the hotel rooms and maybe never come out. at MFF, one of my first, I think the first room party I've ever been to actually was, there's this guy who was just hanging out in his room. He had like an open door. The door wasn't literally open, but he was like open invite to this huge list of people to all come by throughout the convention. He had a ton of drinks set up, and Smash Brothers on the Wii, Smash Brothers on the Switch with like the 8-player adapter and everything just set up, and people were just coming by, just knocking on the door and showing up, chatting for a while. I met some people there that I still encounter at conventions to this day here and there, and it was a real chill vibe, and you just come in, hang out, chat for a while, and leave. And there's a lot of people coming into that room that are all connected in one way to that person or friends of that person and so on. But if you're not connected in any way to anything in that network, you have no idea that room exists or where it is or anything about it, and would never know that. And so that's the learning curve of furry conventions, is that I have had very good and very bad conventions based entirely on who I happen to know, or whether I happen to know people, and whether or not the people that I happen to know turn out to be the kind of people that get back to you and like genuinely are like up with wanting to do stuff, or if they're the kind of like flaky party people that like show generic interest in everything and always sound like they're like, yeah, but then you like when plans actually start happening, they disappear and you never hear from them, and then that kind of stuff happens. Like, it's just normal party things and normal friend group things that we probably navigated with your own friend groups already, but like because of that stuff being so invisible and based on people knowing each other, that can make furry conventions a bit of a drag if you show up without a plan and a friend group and like people that you can rely on to make the convention fun for you if nothing else happens. Like, your friend group sets like the minimum of like, here's how many people I might interact with here. Is at least these people I can rely on being people I'll encounter throughout this convention, and then maybe other cool stuff happens too. Maybe they know people and it leads up places, but like if you show up alone, you're showing up as unconnected as possible, and you're just much less likely to like find your way into cool experiences or randomly be invited as like the 12th person in a large karaoke group that all carpools to a place to do karaoke for 4 hours or whatever. Like, these things just kind of happen. But I will say, and I have done this, if you have a local furry convention that's just driving distance away, and all you would have to do is pay for the drive and maybe parking fees and maybe registration, you could do that. Honestly, it might be worth showing up even with no plan and no connections. If you've never been at a furry convention, it can be cool just to show up and see all the fursuits and like say hi to some people, and you can politely ask people if you can take a picture of their fursuit and stuff like that. And maybe you'll fall ass backwards into like social interactions and end up like making some friends, even if you're good at that, or random happenstance and whatnot. For example, a convention that I have super mixed feelings about is Further Confusion in San Jose. It's a small convention. It's extremely hotel room based, so everyone kind of disappears in their hotel rooms. It's hard to really keep up with people there, and there's not much going on attraction wise or event wise because it's a pretty small convention. So it's not the best convention to go to if you're not connected, but I do only live like 2 hours away from it. So last year for Further Confusion, I just drove over there and I paid to park across the street, which was like nothing. They just had a lot with spare parking. And that convention is very cool to visit if you want to visit a convention for just a day and check it out. Especially if you go during the weekend when it's like really full of people. The parking will probably be worse. It's a big U-shaped building with a open plaza. So here's the street right here, and then right here is this huge square-shaped past the sidewalk area that's just like planters and like walkways, and also just a huge open concrete empty space. And that leads to that area just being completely filled with fursuits. And so that's like one of the most condensed fursuiting areas I've ever seen in any convention ever. And in particular, there's a dynamic that happens where as the sun sets, it gets colder outside, and it's inside it's relatively warm. So a lot of the normal human people are indoors as, you know, all this, because we like air conditioning or heating and so on. We like to have climate control. But the fursuiters who are overheating in their suits, it's currently January in San Jose. It's a nice temperature outside. So all these fursuiters walk outside at this plaza, especially in the later hours, and are just amassed there because the chill outdoor weather just very much helps with regulating temperature, and it's like a nice environment, and it's really nice and open. There's so much space for the fursuiters. It's like it's a funny thing where that's just the ideal location for the suitors to have. And so it's like, it's kind of like the coolest location. Like, I don't like FC very much, but that one location is like the best location in any furry convention to me. Like, that one open plaza is like really cool to see just because of who's there, and seeing everyone kind of mingle and all the suits being out in the San Jose winter air, which is like, it's not snowing. It's the middle of California. It's not going to get actually cold, but it's so much colder than all the other options if you're going to be walking around in a fursuit. So if you go to a furry convention as a day trip to just hang out, and it's like that gives like the level of stakes of being like a picnic, or you and some friends checking out a restaurant together or something. It's like, those are low stakes, so you might have a good time just because you don't have that high of expectations. If you fly across the country and probably spend $1,000 on your combined flight and hotel and so on, and you're investing, and you have to get time off of work, and you have to look forward to this big expensive plan for months and months as you wait for it to come up, and you're going to this convention alone, you're setting yourself up for like a stressful trip where now there are stakes, and you have to you're trying to get some kind of experience out of this that'll make it worth it, how much you invested in it. And if you show up alone, you might be very disappointed in what your experience turns out to be. And that's why I warn people not to go to these conventions alone. But if you do show up to a furry convention alone, there's usually a schedule page over here. The funny thing about furry conventions is that I almost never check the schedule. I almost never actually look through any of this besides maybe the dance competition. I just kind of don't go to panels because of how much that's not really what I and a lot of people are there for necessarily. But the funny thing about that is that if you aren't going to any of these events, you might be able to visit a furry convention for the day or even the whole trip and just never register, never pay to register, and never actually get admittance into the convention, because you can just walk around the hotel or whatever the space is usually without being registered. Except for Anthrocon, because Anthrocon is a convention center, and so in order to get into that, you need to be registered and have attendance. But if you're going to go to any of these events, you generally have to be registered so that you can actually gain access to the inside of this place. And there's a wide variety of things. We have a color categorization here. All this orange stuff is gaming. So a lot of this is, there's people doing gameplay of tabletop games, there's video game tournaments. All this pink spots are the other kind of pink spot. Yeah, those should be concerts, I believe. There's usually yeah, that literally says DJ. There's DJs cycling throughout the stages, pretty much throughout the entire convention. The Artist Alley and Vendor Hall are there. There's a con store. There's a lot. You can see there's a very dense schedule, but all these saturated pink ones are mostly, a lot of those are meet and greets, so it's they just get a room, and then they just hyenas, go meet up in here, and that's very funny, because that's just people meeting up because their personas happen to be hyenas, which doesn't sound like a lot in common, but you're already furry, you're probably queer, you have a hyena persona, it gives you something to chat about, and these are just chances to meet up with people, and have some base shared experience to start with, and then you build up from that, and then you might make friends in these places, and then you have more specific things like people meeting up because of a specific furry interest, like the Vor meetup. But then you also have more esoteric things where it's like, it's not even especially furry. It'll be like, here's a meetup for medical furries that work in medical. And it's like, now you have even more in common. You're furries, and you're both at this convention, and you're both the type of people that go to furry conventions, and you're both like nurses or something. You might really make friends in those kinds of situations. So those are some of your best chances to maybe meet people. Transgender furs. I do find it weird that meet and greets and panels are the same color, because that is very confusing for the schedule, because those are two very different categories of things. But there are a lot of panels, and the panels can be very interesting, or they can be like nothing. There are definitely just people who like here, stand-up comedy is probably somebody they're hosting a panel, but the panel is them just doing a comedy a stand-up comedy routine. There will be cases where people host game shows with the audience and kind of screw around, and that's like, sometimes it's something like Smash or Pass Pokemon stuff. Sometimes it's about trivia and a lot of games where the points are made up and don't matter, and maybe people in the audience get brought up to compete, or maybe it's just calling on random people to see what they'll say, and people kind of just like using the space to just have some fun. But they also get like more intricate, and I forget what I pulled out of here, but I definitely pulled some stuff out here to like poke at and just kind of like give you guys some kind of idea of some of the range of this stuff. Let's see. So on May 8th at 11 a.m. we have miniature painting, and I think I saw that somewhere else in here too, so I think it just happens maybe every day. Like, this is just, you get a free miniature and some supplies to try to paint miniatures, and they also encourage you to come around and participate in the various tabletop stuff they're going to be doing. So you can just kind of join a group of people and paint a miniature and learn how to do it. And that's just because furries are huge nerds. That's like the two things you can't escape about furries. It's the two unavoidable building blocks of a furry, is that they are, like, I know it's like the defining trait is supposed to be interest in furry creatures, like interest in like Disney furry character design type stuff, basically anthropomorphic things, werewolves and so on. But the other circle of the Venn diagram is being a huge nerd, and the other circle of the Venn diagram is being queer, like being transgender or non-binary or gay, pan, bi, and so on. And those squish together, and like we're used to like Venn diagrams having the little spot in the middle that is the overlap. This one's mostly just one circle that looks like it's out of focus. There's a little bit of an edge for like not particularly nerdy people, a little bit of an edge for people who aren't that are like the straight cis people, but mostly those three circles just completely overlap, and everyone is extremely nerdy and some variation of gay or queer and so on, and obviously furry. There are still people, there's a little bit of a circle down there too, though, that just a little bit of sticking out of like the non-furries that are there because their friends are furries, or they were bored or something, or they're a confused businessman here for a business convention, but the furry convention's happening at the same time, and they just kind of wandered into stuff because there's funny, colorful animals around, which might make them a furry. But that's furry is a self-applied label, and you don't call other people furries if they don't want to be called furries, because that's not how it works. But that is like the defining thing, and that's why it's such a fun environment, is because like it is good to meet furries, because you have, if you're a nerdy queer furry, it's like that's a lot of things you kind of do have in common, and you can then go on to talk about a wide variety of other things from there and meet a lot of people, and it's just like it's easier to be social in these kind of contexts than other things. Visual novels and how to make one. This is a panel that's being hosted by Jericho, the creator of Remember the Flowers, who has shown up a few times on this channel, and if you're on my Patreon, has shown up a lot more, because we're playing the visual novel Lyre, Lyre, but I'm stocking up on the episodes because it takes a while to record, and we don't have a very consistent schedule, so I'm like trying to get it all pre-recorded before I start releasing it publicly, because I don't want to start airing it and then run out of episodes and then have that go wrong. So Jericho's running a panel to help with that. He was having trouble finding a co-host for a while. I was going to help because I'm I wanted to try to help because I'm rooming with Jericho, but I won't be even landing until hours after this panel's already over. It's such an early panel on Thursday, and I won't even be landing until in Atlanta until after that, because flying from the West Coast to the East Coast is just vicious. But if you want another variation of like the topic I did my last major video essay type video where I talked about making furry visual novels, you can show up here to have one of the more successful furry visual novel creators talk about their experiences and so on. And Mac is going to be there as the co-host now, who is the creator of Liar. Expanding your sexual health toolkit, Q&A and FAQ regarding everything from PrEP to Doxy PEP. This session, held in a mixed Q&A and FAQ format, is designed to help empower attendees to dispel common misconceptions about their sexual health. During the session, specific topics will be covered, including but not limited to knowing when to get you tested for HIV and the various types of tests available, exploring various options for pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, or post-exposure prophylaxis, PEP, understanding Doxy PEP's use in preventing STI transmission, and tips on how to have that tough talk with your healthcare provider. My tough talk was that the next time I saw my doctor after I came out as gay, I told him I was gay and that I should probably get on PrEP, and then that was the end of the conversation. He just signed me up to get the tests, which is that you go to the testing center of your hospital. You get a few tests done that are relatively basic, blood tests and swabs. And then, like a week later, you have 3 months of PrEP come in your inbox. It's a pill you take once a day, and it makes it extremely hard to contract HIV. This is actually a big deal. Like it's important that conversations like this happen at these conventions. It's important that they happen in general. Something that's really cool about furry conventions is that they usually have free STI testing at the convention itself. Like, you can get tested for STIs at the convention. It's a very culturally important thing to have going on, and it's frankly like it's one of those things where it's like gay people is the stereotype, but it's like it's the type of stuff where more awareness and careful stuff was happening in society, and these conversations were more normalized, then like these would be less problems in general for all people. Like, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that at this point, the most common new HIV, I don't know if this is true or not, but I was hearing that like the most common cases of new HIV cases was in most commonly straight women at this point, because gay people have PrEP and are taking all these steps to specifically avoid contracting it. And it's like, I think about that and I'm like, on one hand, it was cool at the moment that I said I was gay, I could just get this pill immediately. But on the other hand, I'm like, it's weird that it's not normalized for people to just have access to medication that can help them not gain these horrible diseases, and that like it's still so stigmatized and thought of as like the gay disease that the moment you say that you're gay and you mention this stuff, there's like no barriers and you just get it immediately. But no one else is having this conversation and talking about whether or not they should be on medications that avoid getting these horrible diseases. Like there's something to unpack there, right? Like it's a little weird to think about. It's like, I'm like, one, this is extremely helpful, but there's like a slightly subtle homophobia to the vibe of like how instantly prescribed it is to me and not other people. I don't know. I'm not going to spend too much time. I mean, I already have, but although speaking of homophobia, much worse thing that's happening is that last I've heard, there is a case where somebody tried to sue over the fact that their gay coworker was getting PrEP covered. They were getting PrEP and it was covered by medical insurance and so on, and it's like, you know, it's free, and it's like they were suing over that, like as if it's some kind of reverse discrimination. Like, how dare they get this thing? This should be stopped. They shouldn't be getting any kind of benefits. And it's supposedly on the way to like the Supreme Court. And so the idea that this thing is free, that helps prevent HIV, could go away if our conservative Supreme Court is really weird about that. And that's just frustrating, because it's like, it's returned to like Reagan type shit where it's like, let's just like, because this helps queer people, we should ignore it or destroy it. And like, I can't interpret it in any way other than just people wanting people to get AIDS more. Like, just hateful people that are going to cause more HIV to spread, and they're doing it out of spite because preventing it helps queer people, and they hate queer people, and they're that hateful that they'll do that. And that is a fucking world that we live in. Like, this is the prime example of a thing that's just doing good, and there's no reason to fuck with it, and it's not affecting your life. There's no reason to care about it, but just finding out that technically queer people are getting a form of free healthcare, and that going to the Supreme Court in any way is like, it's just dark. It's just like something is deeply fucking wrong with people, and it's frustrating to have to deal with this kind of stuff. And like, if you think about, like, it'd be like charging for the COVID vaccine. It's like, the reason these things are free, and why it's important to subsidize it and to make it free for people in practice, even if something somewhere is paying for it, whatever, is that, like, if there's a barrier, then people aren't going to cross that barrier. You massively reduce the adoption rate of something if it costs money. There's a reason why free-to-play games are free-to-play and then try to charge you microtransactions afterwards. Being free-to-play multiplayer games gets people in the door to play the game and gets a bunch of people doing it and so on. And obviously, like, for healthcare stuff, you want a somewhat similar tactic, not for the charging people later stuff, but like the part of, like, you need that adoption rate. You want, if you're trying to avoid pandemics and widespread disease and the massive consequences of them, then you want everyone to adopt the thing. So it's like, you wouldn't like be like, finally there's a COVID vaccine, everyone has to pay $100 for it. It's like, you know, we already have to deal with vaccine hesitancy and all these other fucked up things, but like, and like conspiracy theories about that stuff and the fucking MMR vaccine autism bullshit, but like all these lies. But then having it cost money, a lot more people would be like, I think I could just catch COVID and I'd survive. I'd be fine. Because you're now it's now a risk. You're like, okay, do I pay the $100 and risk that maybe I never get COVID, or I'm asymptomatic, or it's not a big deal? And it's like, no, you don't want people to do that. You want herd immunity. You want everyone to get the fucking vaccine so they stop spreading it everywhere and making the world worse and leading to thousands of dead people. Like, that's the whole fucking point. And it's like, if PrEP works on a horrible thing that we don't want to have around it anymore, it's like one of the most upsetting diseases that is always going around. And you would want HIV to be gone. This should be uncontroversial that you want HIV to be gone. And people are trying to get rid of PrEP, which pretty much eliminates the possibility of getting HIV. It's very good for people to have collectively, and for you to have this like base understanding that in context there's like everyone's on it, and that being good, that should be a good thing. But they're trying to eliminate it, which is just like being on HIV's team, like, against humanity, which I don't know why conservatives are disease fetishists, but that's been the last 6 years of my life. Is just, oh, another kind of outbreak thing's happening. Oh, what's the new way that conservatives are trying to help the disease against humanity? What the fuck? Yeah, that's the ramble I got from there. We're off topic, obviously, but I'm just like, I am very mad about I'm so fucking annoyed about the PrEP thing, because it's like, it's just good, and people should have access to it. Everyone who's willing to take PrEP should be taking PrEP, because anyone who can, like, we want to eliminate these diseases, don't we? We don't want more lives to be ruined. Jesus. Anyway, cyberpunk across different mediums. Let's see, this is a thing about cyberpunk. I'll be honest, I mixed it up with the other cyberpunk one and opened it by accident, but there's another cyberpunk panel that's not the one that I meant. But yeah, discussing cyberpunk in general. The stars of Beastars, they have Jonah Scott and Ben Diskin. Jonah Scott plays the English dub Legoshi, and Ben Diskin plays Jack. Calling them the stars of Beastars is very funny to me, because Jack has a minor role in the Beastars comic and in a much smaller role in the Beastars anime. He's barely in it. But I think Ben Diskin also plays Haida in Agretzko, and he's separately doing panel where he just like meet Haida from Agretzko. So he's just doing both. It's like it's two B-Stars voice actors happen to be at this convention, and that's because Ben Diskin and Jonah Scott both have furry fan. They both have furry fan bases at this point because of Legoshi and Haida, and so they show up to these things to do panels and chats and things, and just kind of enjoy an online audience as a result of that stuff. Friend of the channel, Jeremy Blake, aka Red Means Recording. He's a YouTuber that covers synthesizers and music stuff. He's been around for ages. He also did the soundtrack to my visual novel Since November, and he is guest of honor at Furry Weekend Atlanta, and is going to be also specifically hosting a concert on Friday, 7:30 to 9 at the Atrium stage. And this is just the kick-ass poster that they have for that. It's just really cool. And that's just, there's concerts going nonstop. But this one, I know who's doing it. And that's significant. Polyamory 101. Curious about polyamory, how people manage it? Come learn, ask questions, and share experiences and or struggles. Rope Collie and their partners have been practicing it for 4 years and have experienced multiple styles and been through formal coaching on it. One of their partners is even a therapist. So it's just, hey, here's an alternative approach to relationships. Let's talk about it. And I love that. Like there's all the nerdy stuff. There's a lot of queer stuff. There's a lot of like breaking down the assumptions of what society is and has to be and questioning that stuff. Like polyamory is always interesting and the opposition to it and the way that people get so mad about it sometimes, because it's another version of breaking down heteronormativity. Like at the core of that stuff, cis heteronormativity assumes that there are two genders and they have these roles specifically in society. And that's questioned by women being able to vote, women having jobs, women having agency, feminism as a concept. It's questioned by queerness and transness and polyamory and anything that doesn't fit that exact bucket of one man, one woman, and they're a breeding pair. The goal is to have children and worship God and perform their gender roles, and the man provide for the woman, and the woman not having a bank account and all this other shit. The further you get away from that, the more interesting things get them. And like this stuff is very common in my experience. Furries are full of people who, if not being polyamorous, are in often open relationships. You will often encounter people who are married and they're here at the convention to fool around, and they're doing that with their partner's complete consent and knowledge, or even participation. It's just a lot of wide open, different approaches to relationship. A lot of people of that who can very maturely understand the idea that like these two people are in love, and they're married, and they built a life together, and they're doing this all, but also they can bring in other people and experience things with other people, and then just go right back to, going home. And it probably is even easier to compartmentalize on some level. It's like, oh, you go to this convention together and you get up to all sorts of other stuff, but then you go home with each other and it's just the two of you and your dogs and your house and so on. And that's the life you've built together. There's a lot of stuff that just like, once you're queer on any level, you're pulling bricks out of that wall, and it collapses so quickly of like all the assumptions of what relationships have to be and why they have to be that way don't make sense anymore. And so who cares? And so it just comes down to obviously your relationship and your expectations and what you care about. There are people who are, God, what's it called? Closed? Yeah. There's people who have closed relationships. I don't remember what like the term is for like normal relationships. And there are people who are just monogamous and closed, and that's also a thing. Monogamous is actually the more accurate, the more commonly used term for that. Normal people use the word monogamous, but people who are used to some of the stuff would say closed as opposed to open. Which I guess those two mean different things, don't they? Because polyamory and monogamy, that'd be like you go home to your what's the poly word? Your polycule, as opposed to your one-on-one marriage. It's like that's the more involved thing of long-term relationships with a bunch of people at once, and there being a web or shape there, as opposed to open being a open would be like a monogamous relationship between two people, but they're open to experiences with other people, but you're not getting into the relationship. That's just, even if you're having relations. But yeah, I love that there's so many panels about this kind of stuff, even if I'm not always intending the specific ones. There's a full web of things happening. We're talking about genres of fiction. We're talking about philosophical concepts. We're talking about sexual health. We're talking about the different roles of different of gender and sexual and relationship dynamics that contradict the only one that we're told growing up. And like, that's just opening people up to what could just be a happier life and giving them the tools to process these things, or the chances to discuss their struggles and figure out what does and doesn't go wrong for them and things like that. Conversations that should just be normal. Pup play psychology, the why behind the woof. Nearly every con that offers AD or 18 plus panels has some kind of pet or pup event. Typically they're meets and greets or how-to guides or common practices designed for an audience of all experiences. We like to do something else entirely. In this panel, we hope to investigate the psychological and sociological phenomena that make pup play fun, and which made it such an emotionally important part of many of our lives. For those that know, pup play it's when you wear that mask that's like kind of like a skin-tight blackish mask with like color highlights usually, and it has like the muzzle sticking out. It's like a fake dog snout and then little ears up here. I don't know where I put the prop from one. I have one that I used in a video once. It does not fit. It was just to be a goofy prop for a minute, and I don't remember where I put it. But sometimes people at furry conventions just wear those because it's like a DIY fursuit. It's like the fursuit provides people with anonymity and the chance to hide their face and a chance to just kind of like vibe without having to be observed as themselves. And for some people, that's like such a helpful thing to kind of get in a different headspace and just kind of enjoy themselves. Like maybe if I wear a mask, I'll dance at a party and I won't feel weird about that. I don't know. I haven't tried it. But fursuits cost thousands of dollars. So a pup hood that you bought online on Amazon for $30 or whatever can be a really quick replacement for that. But it's also associated with this kink for pup play, which is the origin of why people were mostly using it, I think, before furries started wearing them for fun, just to hide their face and just to like participate in furry spaces differently. So there's a debate whether or not they're allowed in public spaces and whether or not that's appropriate. I have mixed feelings because I'm like, on some level, I can philosophically accept the idea that because it's got a social context and all of things that are appropriate or not appropriate are determined by their social context, that it could be deemed inappropriate to have in places where technically younger people are walking around. But at the same time, I'm like, if they're not doing anything sexual, it is just a funny mask, and it doesn't have a dildo sticking out of it. It's not like overtly horny. It's just a funny mask. So I don't think that if your kids see it or whatever, it's like, how will I ever explain this to my kids? The fact that someone was wearing a mask, it's like, it's a mask. It's like being confused how you'll ever explain a Renaissance fair to your kids. It's like, oh, people are wearing costumes? I don't understand. It's like, if they're already seeing fursuits, the weird lycra, what's it called? No. Vinyl mask or whatever isn't that confusing or weird. And so it's like, when it's removed from the sexual context, even if there's a social context that in a cultural context that makes it sexual on some level, if it's removed from that context, I don't know if I really fully subscribe to the idea that it's inappropriate in public. I don't know. I guess it's never been legislated, I'm sure, by anyone else. So it's just like it's vibes and arguments, and Twitter will have a blow up about it every 3 months because that's what they do. But pup play itself is when people essentially dehumanize themselves. Is that the right way to put it? They're unhumaning themselves. They're basically pretending to be a puppy, or they're acting like they're a dog, and So like they take orders, they're nonverbal, they're playful, they're probably on all fours and just kind of like sort of like they're engaging in a form of role play that is an escape from being, you know, an adult human who pays taxes and has anxiety. And so like that's what they're talking about here. And it does you see people that just walk, when you see people walk around in a pup hood at conventions, they're just going to be a human basically most of the time, but behind closed doors, if they're doing this stuff, then they're going to be like doing role play. And some of that might be sexual and some of it might just be borderline therapeutic, just like enjoying sort of like regressing and being in the state of mind. Let's read the rest of this now that I've kind of introduced it messily. A lot of this rambling is why I, you know, script my video essays, because this is how I talk in real life, and it's a fucking nightmare if you're trying to get anywhere in any amount of time. But people that watch my Let's Plays already know that. Both presenters are published researchers and have an appetite for the academic. The body of research which helped explain the mechanics of pup play is surprisingly large, spanning from B.F. Skinner's groundbreaking 1963 paper on operant conditioning to Darren Langbridge and Jamie Lawson's 2019 phenomenological investigation of pup play. Combining contemporary human and animal behavior research with our own experiences, case studies, and interviews, we hope to illuminate not just how pup play is done, but why it's so appealing. Making the science accessible to a wide audience of practitioners who might not know exactly what goes on under the hood. This is what's part of what's fun about furry. Is like people take the shit seriously. Look at this. This is not the people listed in the previous thing, or the topic really, but like I have a copy of Fur Science here, which is some of the breakdown of like people investigating what's the gender and trans and gay and so on breakdown of the fandom, and like what percentage of people have autism, all these other effects and so on. And I have not gone through this necessarily yet, but I'm like, I got a copy of it so I can do future research and learn more about what the stuff is and so on. And it's a thick ass book. It's part of why it's so thick is that it's got like all like the citations and actual like raw data and so on. There's just like a lot in here to take up space, because it's the type of thing that would take up space. But like people are trying to do science and research and understand furry on different levels, and I kind of want to do this too, where I want to try to break down, like, people want to say that the furry is just a fandom or it's just a community and so on, but increasingly I think that furry might have an important cultural context. Like furry might be the equivalent of like something more like the punk movement or the hippie movement or the goth movement and so on, like things that actually have a specific social context and a politic to it that is significant. And like furry being around for so many decades and growing and having such a history and being so tied up with queerness and having its own internal like political schisms and so on, like I think there is something meaningful to the context of furries, and it's interesting to break down this kind of stuff. And so it's interesting to see that people are also trying to figure out what to think about pup play and be like, no, let's actually get down to this. Like, what's going on here? Like, let's not just do the surface level explanation, but like try to break down why people do this, why they enjoy it, what it might mean for them, and also why there's like a history of this kind of stuff and what's going on here. Let's take it seriously, and that's a lot of fun. I've been sober for nearly 15 years. Ask me anything. That kind of says what it says on the tin, but like, this is just like another example of like the range of stuff that happens at these things. Like, here's just a conversation about somebody's journey with sobriety. Show up at this location and this time and have a chat. How to organize in the furry fandom. This is another example of like when I think about people that I might want to talk to, if I try to break down furries as like a sort of movement. Jonathan Vare Duncan and Sasha Jones do these panels at a number of conventions. I don't think I've been to How to Organize in the Furry Fandom yet. I think that the one that I saw them host at FC was one that was more about local networking, but it might be related to this kind of stuff. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but they do polyamory panels, and they do this panel and maybe a few other ones, but they give these talks about talking about organizing and talking about support networks and so on. Do you feel distressed and powerless in the face of current events? As furries, what options are there to constructively build a future when we can all be safe and provided for. In this freshly illustrated and completely new rewrite of our previous organized talk, we will talk about the unique position of furry and offer comprehensive ways that we can work together to provide a joyful and meaningful future for everyone. Q&A and fresh zines after the talk. And this, I'd recommend this. I've been to one of their talks. They're funny. They have like they have like very engaging topics to present, and they're taking this stuff seriously. And it's like, this is where you'll actually have like, this is like the, like, here's an actual like breakdown of like, we're actually getting into leftism here. Like we're getting into like, how can we survive the upcoming years? What are alternate lifestyle choices that can actually lead to more happiness and more welcoming, more belonging, more safety in many cases, like an actual support network. Like who has your back? How do you build these connections and have people that you can rely on in the small term? Because as much as global politics and federal politics can be scary, like that's all this massive scale stuff. Oftentimes what's local is what's more important, and that's the stuff that people are least engaged with and least able to deal with. And we increasingly like don't even like talk to our neighbors or know people locally, and we work, we do stuff online, and then we travel. And this is a very insightful look beyond that kind of stuff. Intro to modular. Red means recording, the same person that did my soundtrack and has the YouTube channel and did that and doing that concert, also just is doing an entire guide on making music with modular synthesizers, which is a lot of what he's often up to on his YouTube channel. So you can see him in person and have him see him give a talk and not just doing a concert. Water. I've been talking for so long. We are Cyberpunk, the one that I meant to click on the first time. Whoops. This is Rio, the creator of one of the visual novels that I've covered in the past. Yeah, there it is. String 0. Also, I just realized I wasn't recording screen. I was just showing my face still. Whoops, forgot to switch back to the other camera. I'm not experienced at this. But he has a cyberpunk furry visual novel, and this is a chance to break down cyberpunk themes and so on with furry writers. The Moonlight Festival. This is the After Dark Festival. This is noteworthy. It's just like an extension of like, discussing the adult element of the furry fandom, and that just being like an element of the whole thing. It's worth acknowledging that like most of these conventions have the After Dark night, essentially, which is when whatever kind of like DJ space or one of the big rooms will become the After Dark area, and people are allowed to show up there and change into much less appropriate attire, and they show up for a dance in that context. And it's a particular space. I was amused by the fact that last year at FWA, I got recognized at the Moonlight Festival more than I've ever been recognized anywhere at any convention. And it was already at a convention where I was getting recognized a fair bit. And I'm just like, I was amused by how frequently that was and how much I was chatting with people that were wearing booty shorts and crop tops and fishnets and things. But it is, to be fair, a specific context where you're practically encouraged to be a thing in a situation where you're going to be like looking at people and dressing up to be looked at and everything. So I guess people are more actively looking around, and it probably led to me being recognized way more, which is funny. But like at FWA, there's particularly like way off in one direction, there's a big stage where a performance is happening. There's a whole middle area with just a bunch of people mixed in. They had a side attraction that was roped off where they're doing shibari, like rope tying on people and doing all of the bondage and everything, and then suspending people up in the air and so on, and doing that whole get up. And it was like you had to get in line, not a real line, but like a queue that's like you get your name on the list and so on, and then they were taking in like one person every like 20 minutes per host or whatever, because it takes a long time to do all that. And then they have on the far end, they have the night market, which is where they have the after dark, like the 18 plus dealer's den type stuff all happening over there, where they have a bunch of relevant stuff there. At FWA, in the middle, they had a pup play pen where a bunch of people were engaging in pup play in a little closed off, like velvet roped off area so that people wouldn't walk into it that weren't participating. And it's like, it's basically a dog park for people. Like, just in the middle of this party and dance and everything, they were just having a dog park functionally for their pup play event. It's just, that's the kind of space it is. It's honestly, it's fascinating. Like, if you're not weird about it, like, a lot of the stuff is just like, it's a great moment to experience so many so many like facets of the human experience all in one place that are often beyond what you'd be usually thinking about. Halo 2 tournament, I put this in just to want to highlight that there's video game tournaments, just to like reference the wider spread of stuff going on at these. And then this one caught my attention. Deconstructing religion, reclaiming ritual. As with any queer, kinky, or non-conforming space, religion has left many of us with scars of shame and guilt. This open discussion will focus on setting aside the harmful elements of religion and reclaiming our rights to create and honor our own rituals. It's like, once again, another moment of like questioning upbringing and processing what people are going through and dealing with these things in these unique spaces. Like, so if you want to go to a lot of panels, then like, and you show up to a convention solo, you probably want to go to one of the big ones. So like this place has a decent, this convention seems to have a pretty decent amount of overall panels to go to. So you could panel surf all day if you can't come up with other stuff to do. You might only be able to get away with that at FWA, MFF, and Anthrocon. The other ones I've seen to have much sparser schedules, but each convention has its own particular vibe. I was considering breaking those down, but we've been going on for so long that I should really wrap this up so I can actually upload this video, which is already late, frankly. But you feel free to ask me more questions about stuff if you want to. Switch to the perspective again. I'm going to be at Furry Weekend Atlantic this weekend. I'll be landing in Atlanta. I'll be staying in one of the main hotels, and I'll just be around. I don't host any panels or events myself. That sounds really stressful. I don't think I'd handle that well. Not that I haven't tried, but I don't trust myself to be the guy at the table looking at a room full of 30 to 200 people or whatever. That sounds awful. And I don't generally do like any kind of like, hey, I'm over here, come find me type announcements, both because that also sounds stressful, inviting people to come at me or trying to take up space in that kind of way. But also because my goal at a furry convention is to actually have a good time and experience the convention. So I, generally speaking, if I'm not currently doing something, I'm trying to find something to do. And so that's what I'm working towards. If you spot me in public spaces, feel free to talk to me and say hi and all that. That's all fine. I am almost by definition not doing anything right now because of the fact that I'm in the public space in the first place. And so that's the perfect time. But I don't know when that will be. It just kind of comes and goes throughout the day. Generally speaking, what's nice about furry conventions is that I talked about how it's a big party, and that is true. But it's also a party that you have your own bedroom in. Like, it's like, actually, that sounds worse, actually. That makes it sound like it's a house party being held at your house, which is not as good, because if you try to hide in your own room from a house party, it's still stressful. But you have all these different levels of like parties. You have the 18 and plus stuff. You have the rave. You have the block party dense stuff that stresses me out. You have the more chill, super public party of everyone just kind of wandering out this big open space and chatting and finding people that they know at random. And then you have all the little intimate parties of people hanging out and chatting and drinking and like being in a closed off space with just their friends. But if any of those get overwhelming and any of those get stressful, you could just go back to your room, because you have a hotel room somewhere around there, and you just go on back to there and you just lay down and just decompress for a bit, turn on the garbage hotel TV or scroll your phone or whatever, and just reset and then go back out. And so it's a pretty comfy situation, because it's a situation where you get to be exposed to things and kind of widen your horizons and learn about yourself and learn about the people around you and enjoy a lot of that. But you can always just walk out of the room of whatever the thing is that you've got yourself into, and you can just always go right back to your room and just distance yourself and then reset and then go and then pick another thing to do. And that's why I think for a lot of people it's really comfy. And as far as like why the 18 plus stuff, I meant to say this earlier, but for me, the reason why the hoarding parties even exist or why people are hooking up and so on, the way I interpret it is that like it's a lot of like lonely gay nerds and stuff like that. You have people that are of a sexuality or identity where, generally speaking, you are encouraged to hide who you are, which makes it harder to meet people. But even if you are super open and around people who are open, you just are a statistical anomaly. Like, people that are compatible with you are relatively rare because most people are straight or something. So you have these conventions where it's like, okay, you meet people online pretty much specifically through the lens of being some version of queer, and you network with a lot of these people, but then congratulations, you know people that are queer, but they're spread across the whole world. So when people then all coalesce at one event, it's like, it's inevitable that people would probably be trying to get a lot of their feelings out because like they're in the same place. And then you're trying to figure out yourself and these people, and maybe trying to figure out whether or not any of these people might be prospects for a longer term relationship or not. But even beyond that, just like, you don't need that necessarily. There's just the element of like, you get to be yourself in these contexts, and you go from your daily lonely day job life to these contexts where you're surrounded by people like you. And I'm like, of course it makes, why wouldn't that happen? Of course it would happen. So I don't find that remarkable or surprising at all that a lot of stuff happens at conventions. And I wouldn't be that surprised if it happens at other conventions because of that element. Like, there is a NSFW 18 plus element to furries in pretty much all spaces, but even ones that aren't as overtly that, like anime stuff or whatever, I wouldn't be surprised if there's just an element of like, well, people you know are all getting together, and someone sends somebody else a winky emoji, and suddenly you're getting up to plans. It is not that irregular if you are in a shared room situation where you're splitting the room 4 to even 6 ways just to try to save money on rooms, that you hear this or that person in the group chat be like, hey guys, I need the room for the next couple hours because they need the space because they're about to work out some of those feelings. That's going to be it for today, I think. Kind of a meandering mess of a conversation, but these aren't video essays. These are just kind of vloggy things. But I thought it would be kind of fun to, since I'm between two conventions, talk about them a bit and just be more frank and mature about some of the stuff than a lot of the YouTube coverage is, that's so sensationalist about it in a way that like exoticizes the elements that are honestly pretty normal, and also underexplores the queerness and the NSFW element because they're uncomfortable with or ashamed of various elements of that and won't just like talk about it like a normal thing. But I need to edit this and also get through other stuff in my life so I can be ready to go on the flight and get to this convention and so on. And also I really trying to beat blueprints, and it's very long. So send help, please. I'll see you guys later. And if you think I recognized you at the furry convention, but I'm not acknowledging you, and you're trying to unpack that mentally because we're mutuals on a platform, so you kind of think you know me, but I saw you and I didn't do anything, that's because of the aforementioned thing I said where I never introduce myself to people because I'm afraid. So if you want to take the initiative, you could try, because if I know you on some level, then I probably did actually recognize you and did know who you were, but we don't have that kind of friend relationship in person yet, so I don't know where we stand, and I'm in my own head about it. So then, you know, it is me, not you. I'm not avoiding people. I'm just bad.